Wow. This is such an honor. I am so glad to be here. So many of you I've known for so many years, and I'm looking forward to meeting the rest of you during this conference. Thank you, AAV, for having me be the keynote and to share these stories, and of course, the Harrisons, as well as the University of Miami. So what we're going to do today is I want to share with you stories of transformation from almost 40 years working in parrot conservation in Central and South America. I know you can't tell which was the one 30 years ago, which picture that was. And so these are my stories and the stories of other people, and some of you all don't know my stories, so let's go back at the very beginning, and let's go back to Guatemala. Now I went to go do parrot conservation there, not even a year out of veterinary school. But it's why I went to veterinary school. I wanted to do wild bird conservation. And I'd already been attending AAV for several years at this point in 1987. Now here's the thing about 1987 in Guatemala. It was the Civil War. So we went there to do parrot conservation in the midst of my neighbors and my friends being kidnapped, being assassinated. One of our parrot biologists wrote in his field manual that a man was murdered 50 meters from an active yellow-nape parrot nest. I mean, that's what it was like trying to do conservation in that time. It was one of the first parrot conservation projects on this continent. And on top of that, we had nearly 100% poaching of nests. No one had really documented that, and this is in Guatemala with the yellow-nape parrots, but it's actually the story of so many of the places where I work, nearly 100% poaching. So it's really hard to do exact counts of populations, but we've estimated, and what you can see there is that's a graph of a roost site, because yellow-nape Amazons like to come in and roost in the same area. About 250 we were getting consistently during those years in the early 90s, and now there are none. We went from about 50,000 yellow-nape parrots to 400 in the country now. It was a huge decline, 100% poaching for 50 years. We felt we were losing and had lost our world. So I came back to the United States and was trying to process all that information, all that experience that we had. And basically I came back with post-traumatic stress syndrome. It took a while to come back from it. You can read all about it. There's tons of stories there and more current stories as well. But with that much pain and loss, it's really hard to not blame someone. So I came back blaming, well, probably most myself, because I left. I got out, and my friends and my parrots could not get out. And then, of course, all the different hats that I wore, I also blamed those people. So it's a long list. Let's see, US foreign policy, the Civil War, let's talk about that. Also, wealthy people, corrupted people, violent people, politicians, the guerrillas, the poachers, the buyers, the sellers, consumers of everything, but especially consumers of parrots. But here's the thing, what I learned in these stories of transformation that I'm going to share with you, that when we seek a new way of being in the world, is that it comes out of blame, that's not going to work. It needs to come out of a new paradigm where we're all in this together. And this is what I've learned. And this is what I hope to share with you with our stories. And there's actually a thing called transformative conservation. And it's saying, I'm overstating it, but everything has to change. Our inner way that we connect to other people and to birds, that's got to change. And also our societal structures have to be more just and more equitable. This is the only way we're going to do sustainable, long-term conservation. Everything has to change. And what I'm hoping for with these stories that will show some harsh reality, but in that reality is so much beauty and hope. And that's what I wish for you today. So thank you so much for going on this journey with me, and I do hope I'll hear about your journey afterwards. I'll be hanging out at the Harrison Avian Research Conservation Collaborative booth, and just come and find me because I'm getting my chance to talk, but I really would like to hear your story, and because it's our shared story together. And what I'm also hoping that these stories will do is move us beyond this idea of blame and judgment, beyond categories and politics and polarization. Haven't we had enough of this? How can we bond together and know that we're all in this together? And again, I'm hoping that this is what these stories will do for us. Okay, so let's do the harsh reality. Let's go there first. The need for transformation. Well, my experience is, and many of y'all's, that parrots are in trouble. There's a number of papers out there that say roughly 50% of the populations are declining. 1 out of 4 are endangered. And that's not all species and not in all countries and all regions, but that's the general story. And why we need transformation is because the threats are so pervasive. And it's not entirely clear that we're having much of an effect. And most of the studies show 2 major areas. And again, depends on the study, depends on the species, depends on the area, whether it's more the trade or it's more habitat loss. And it all sort of depends. So that picture on the far right is soy production in Paraguay. It's one of the places where we work. And they're just very small remnants, maybe 1% to 2% of the Atlantic forest left. So even if you didn't have 100% poaching, it'd be really hard for the birds to get along, but they also have 100% poaching there. So between the two, it's really hard. And then the domestic and the international trade, it's going gangbusters. It's illegal everywhere on this continent except for 2 countries. Does anybody know those 2 countries where it's okay to trap and export parrots? Anybody know those? Guyana and Suriname, down there near Brazil and Venezuela. So the trade, and even in those countries, there's a huge illegal trade underneath being masked by the legal trade. So the trade keeps on going. We still have, if we didn't protect parrots, we would have in many of our project areas 100% poaching still, if we didn't protect them. And something new's come up in the last 5 years that maybe you all aren't aware of. It's the market for parrot eggs. It's just amazing. We started hitting our project areas in about 2017. And so about every month or 2 months, you get some story about people coming and buying eggs and getting caught in the airports transporting all of these eggs. And just yesterday, I got pictures from the airport in Asuncion, Paraguay, of 9 macaw eggs coming through. And in March, when I was in Honduras, I got a call to help out with 240 parrot eggs caught in the Panama airport, coming through Nicaragua. And Nicaragua is a big place. They come out of our Honduras area and go to Nicaragua and then go to all over the world. So how are we doing against trafficking? Again, depends on the species, and some people are having some fairly good luck. But a paper just came out, a report from the World Wildlife Crime Report. And they basically said, you know, for about 20 years, we've really been trying hard to nip this in the bud. There's been a lot of funding. Our organization has got a lot of funding to work with the wildlife trade. And basically, we're not doing any good. It's still pervasive. It's still rampant. There are some success stories, but it's so involved. It's such high, powerful people with so much money who've been doing this for 50, 60, 70 years. They know what they're doing, and it's really hard to catch this and to stop it. So here's just some more pictures of the various groups of eggs and young chicks that go out in suitcases and go out all over the world. So why do we need transformation? And again, these are my experiences and the experiences of the people that I work with, is we're just tired of the harm in the parrot trade. We're just tired of it. We want it to stop. This is a paper I wrote to the CITES establishment in Suriname, one of the places where it's legal, and it documented as scientifically as I could all the points of harm and stress from the wild bird all the way up to the end consumer. And all the spiritual and cultural and physical things of how human communities are harmed by this. And trying to document and help us guide that the harm is pervasive and it's interconnected. And it's been going on a long time. It's what people do. We don't have to, but it's what we do. And so here's just an example of a paper from South America documenting the trade from the Atlantic forest birds over the Andes down into Peru, where these species should not be found, but they found lots of archaeological evidence of the birds there. So, and there were also breeding centers. There's been some recent papers out about that where they were also breeding them. And the cadavers showed that there were bills that had been cut, persistent plucking, because the feathers were worth quite a bit, fractures that had healed, and chronic evidence of nutritional stress with changes in the bones. So those birds, they had a hard time. And we go a little bit further north. Let's look at the scarlet macaw, really right up there with jade in the trade in prehistoric times. And so this is just showing a couple papers about how the birds moved up all the way up into Colorado. Breeding centers, and again, these birds too showed evidence of trauma and stress being part of the trade. And then along came Europe. And there were documented Europeans before Christopher Columbus, but on his very first trip, he took back enslaved people and 3 Hispaniola parrots. So it started at the very beginning. And if you check European paintings after this date, you just see there's full of parrots. You can see that parrots from all over the world were going into Europe. So, the need for transformation, it's harmful to parrots. I'm going to tell you just one story of Rosa, but I know I could tell you hundreds of these stories. Hundreds. So this is Rosa. She's a young scarlet macaw, about a month and a half, 2 months old. She's over there on the far right. She was confiscated by the authorities in Honduras, and the authorities weren't really set up to take care of the bird. You'll get that, you'll see those pictures. And so I wasn't there, nobody was there to take care of her. And they sent me pictures, and here's a picture they sent me of her. Can you see what they're pointing to? It's a callus on a leg. So her leg fractured and she had no veterinary care. She had to heal on her own. And when I examined her several months later, not only was that leg broken, the other leg was broken and healing, the right wing was broken and healing, and the left wing was broken and healing. Actually, still a non-union displaced. And no one to care for her. She had to go through that herself. And you can also see she's got myiasis, she's got fly strike. Why did she have so many broken bones? What's going on with that? Again, it depends on the species, but in this part of the world, the birds are nesting high up in trees. And if the people don't have the gear to climb the trees, or if the trees are dead and too dangerous, they'll just burn the tree down or cut it down. And so these are big, tall trees, bam. And if the chick survives, great, you can sell it. And if it gets broken bones, it's not paid attention to. So that was Rosa. And here was when I first met her at 9 months of age. The village that we work with that protect their parrots, the authorities delivered them to her, or delivered her to them, and they had to take care of them as little as they knew about it. So look at her. She had upper and lower respiratory disease. You can see the stress bars, the condition of her feathers. She's super thin, body condition of 1, and she literally cried all night long. I could hear her from where I was staying in the village. I thought she was going to die, but we tried. This is the Mosquito people in La Mosquitia, Honduras. And so we worked with her and treated her, and she survived. And here she is a year later, looking pretty good, right? Look at that nice little tail, interacting with the community. She can't fly. She can flap her wings and kind of, get a little bit of lift. She can't really walk, but, she can stand up. So she could not be liberated. So we left her in our new growing rescue center there. And you can see how she's perched. And she had to pull herself with her beak to get across the perch. But she was our ambassador. I don't know how many of y'all work with scarlet macaws, but they can be a little fierce with each other. And so she was the friendly face that immediately welcomed and protected the new birds that came in. And she only lived to be 4 years of age. So this is just a story that we know. I've gotten in nearly 50 birds in this rescue center in the last month and a half. We are swamped. They keep coming in, and these are just the birds that the authorities are catching. And so they die young. And there's a number of statistics out there, and who really knows, and it depends on the species, but this one paper that came out of Mexico, birds that were wild trapped and came into the legal trade, they put the number between 75 and 90% are dead within the first year, between the transport, the capture. And so people often use that figure, and you can see the chart there. And that picture up there, those are our yellow-naped parrots. That was my first trip to Guatemala in 1987. There were a group of 200 that had been confiscated, and you can look at them. They're very thin, and they're dying. Out of that group of 200, 3 survived. And anyone who works with rescued parrots, confiscated, knows that those are often the statistics that we hit. Oh, and a matter of fact, when I ask people in these countries that have pet parrots, I go, how long do parrots live? What's their age? And they often tell me that 5 years of age is an old parrot, because the parrots don't live that long. Like used to be here more frequently in this country. So let's move to Honduras. We have a program we call Brigadas de Bienestar, welfare brigades. So we work with veterinary students and train them up, and then they go and visit homes and try to improve the welfare of the birds in the homes, and they deliver a strong conservation message. So this is one of the birds, one of the homes they visited. It's actually a bar that the veterinary students attended in Honduras. And these are 2 mealy Amazons that lived there, and that's their cage. And the bar would be open all night, and that's where the birds stayed for their entire life. And so you can see the feather destruction. Now this bird was not worked up. This is in Honduras. Didn't see any evidence of external parasites. The nutrition was way off. So I can't say it was stress for sure, but we did some management with these birds and a better cage, and they went up into the trees in the day, and their feathers largely came back. So I'm gonna say it was stress and management. This is not uncommon in birds in other countries that are as for pets. And I imagine it's still here a great deal as well. So that's what they should look like, and that's what happens. And if the birds make it out of the country and they live to be longer and live to be older, sanctuaries where birds go that are no longer can stay in people's homes or where they originally lived, I don't know about all of them, but they're overwhelmed. Some this year are closed doors. They can't take in any more requests. Thousands of requests every year in the United States for birds that need to be surrendered. And this is just an ad of a new conservation alliance that works with sanctuaries as well as conservationists, because it's one flock, it's one global flock, and they're hurting there and they're hurting here. And I just talked to one group, Foster Parrots in Rhode Island, and I said, well, what does it look like this year? And they told me that the single biggest cause why people surrender birds this year is lack of time. People are just overwhelmed, they're busy. It's hard to fit it in. And then if you combine the other categories, they're also really big. That someone in the family is aging, someone is sick, someone is dying, and also low economic resources to be able to take care of the birds. So we're beginning to see how the welfare of people is linked into what's happening with our birds. And in so many of the countries where I work, we could say, oh, Africanized bees and predation, all this is really hurting the birds, this is really true. but underneath this is human well-being and lack of security. And so I want to just tell you some stories about the reality of what's going on there on the front lines of conservation. That where parrots are harmed, people are harmed. So this is a poacher in Honduras. It's illegal to trap there. And this village said, no more trapping of parrots, even though it's illegal. We want everyone to stop. But this poacher defied the community wishes and said, I really want a couple parrots. So he climbed up the macaw's nest in pine trees. It's so unusual, because he wanted to take the 2 chicks. So he gets to the top of the tree, and the nest is up there on the bend of the tree there. And he puts the 2 chicks into his bag, and he starts down the tree, and he makes a mistake. He falls. And he died at the base of the tree, as did one of the chicks. A month later, I was visiting the village, and we were leaving to go out, a couple truckfuls. And so we stopped to see the marker where he had died. And the people poured out of the truck, and they were crying, they were praying, they were chanting, they were dancing. They loved this man, even though he was against their wishes, a kind of a rebel guy of the community. But they didn't want him to die. And I thought, well, that's a lesson learned for me. I'm going to quit being mad at poachers. Well, no, okay, I'm still mad at them. But I understand. I understand. And in so many countries where I work, there are stories of people with broken legs, broken arms, and who have died because they're getting paid $20 a bird, climb a tree to sell it, and somebody in Asia just made $20,000 off of that macaw. When I attended North Carolina State University, a professor of religion once told me there, said, our lives are full of tragic decisions. This is why we need one another. So the people who are trapping birds, they got some hard decisions to make. Some of them really do have to choose who to feed. This is in Honduras. But not all poachers and trappers and buyers are the same. There have been studies out of Africa talking about all the different motivations of the poachers. So some are local community people that want a little bit of money to buy a school uniform for the kids. But a lot of them have gold chains, drive big trucks, have 3 cell phones, and are working the system to move these birds out of these communities and move them to the international market. And so another thing that I learned from all this time in conservation, I think many people have known this for years, but it's really about the people, that if you want a conservation project, the people have to be doing well if the parrots are going to be doing well. So there's Rosa there, and so we're just kind of showing the combined reasons of why we work with people to work with parrots. And another way that parrots are harmed is the ecosystem damage by pulling the parrots out. It's so amazing. When people do carbon footprints, they go, let's just go plant a bunch of forest trees, but they don't put the wildlife back. And we need the parrots as seed dispersers, but they're key mutualists that have a pervasive impact on plant assemblages, which is just a way of saying they're the farmers of the forest. We need them. If we don't have them, we don't have a biodiverse forest. And if we don't have a biodiverse forest, who hurts? All of us do. And also, conservationists are harmed by the trade. This is a colleague of mine, Pedro, in Guatemala. He had a ranch. People were always coming and hunting. And I talked to him, and he said, okay, I'm going to try to save the parrots again. I tried a couple years ago, let's try again. And so he was part of our yellow-naped parrot project. And he got word that there were poachers on his ranch, and he went and confronted them, and they killed him at the base of the yellow-naped parrot nest. He died protecting parrots. There are people dying to keep parrots on the planet, and we know them, and it's not going to stop. Another story of sacrifice. Let's move back to Honduras, La Mosquitia. This is where the scarlet macaws, I mean, really? They nest in pine trees? I didn't believe it when I first went, but there they are. They're nesting in pine trees. And it's in a part of La Mosquitia. It's one of the largest remaining forest tracts still left, but everybody wants the forest land. The indigenous people do have title to it, but in a nearly lawless state, the narco-traffickers, the illegal cattle ranches, they'll do anything, and they have, burning out bridges and killing people to take the land. And so I first went in 2010, a year after the coup in Honduras, and I met Tomas. Tomas, 5 months earlier, had turned in the names of the people who were taking his forest and taking his macaws, and they tried to kill him. They shot him 4 times down at the river when he was taking a bath, and so 5 months later, you know, he's packing guns, everyone's packing guns, we have soldiers with us because it was still really hot. It was still a really hot area my first year there in 2010. And so he takes us down to the river and he points out where bullets have been removed and where bullets still are. And I said, Tomas, why are you willing to risk your life for the parrots? And he said, Doctora, everything is at risk. So I am willing to risk everything. If the parrots don't make it, neither do my people. Lesson learned, Tomas, thank you. Maybe we know it as the One Health Initiative, but the health of one is the health of all. We need our chickens and our parrots and our babies to do well. All of us need to do well. So these conservationists, and I'm again highlighting Honduras right now, they're risking their lives so we can have parrots on the planet for all our health. This is the last several years, last 10 years of our nest results. These are scarlet macaws, and there's some great green macaws in there too. And the blue line is the number of nests that the indigenous people are protecting every year. In 2004, we're going to be back up to about 150 nests that we're protecting this year. And the red line is the percent of nests poached. So when we started in 2014, we documented 100% were poached. Yeah, everything was taken. And then we started, and people were pretty excited, and we didn't work in a very big area, and we dropped it to 0. And then since then, it runs about 12, 13, 14%. If those people weren't there on bicycle, on horse, on motorcycle, by truck, protecting those nests, that number would be 100 back up again. And these people, the mosquito people, are fierce. They're risking their lives for the parrots. This is the rescue center in the first year. It's not how you're supposed to do it. I know, not off a patio. But these people had no help. They had no money, no government help. That was what they knew to do. So we're just going to let them go. And so they started protecting their nest. And now they have worked up. It took us several years to be able to have the courage to go back into the forest. It's not all pine. There's actually broadleaf forest there too. But that's where the narcos are. That's where the stress is to burn the forest down and put in money laundering operations. But things calmed down a little bit, and the people got support. And so there they are, the rangers, in the forest area. It's where the last, 150 great green macaws are that are left in Honduras, and they're in the forest. And so they are daring to make the first indigenous macaw sanctuary reserve in the world. Yeah. They're going in on Monday. They go in every month to do this. And the threats just keep adding up and adding up. This is Santiago Lacuth. He manages our project in this area. That's our project truck. You can see the window is shot up. 2 years ago, they tried to kill him and his son coming back from the local town. And the bullets didn't penetrate, so they were okay. They were okay. And so in the midst of all of this, they built a rescue center. And it's really close to the village. I know you're not supposed to release birds near people. It's too dangerous to release them any further away from the village. And so these are the people there. And Anida is the one in the back. She can't read or write. She's the director. And so I don't know, we've released maybe 500 birds over the last 10 years.
Okay.
And they have to do this work with protection. Not always, it comes and goes. So there's the parrot on the soldier. This is a released bird. And sometimes the authorities bring us pet birds. We really ask them not to do that. And sometimes they talk, and we let them go anyway. And lots of people do this. So we're not the only ones skirting about the kinds of birds we want to liberate. So this bird is free flying, hangs around the village. And the soldier is there to be and to protect the conservation activities. And I caught this video of the two of them interacting, and to me it shows the wonderful mix of violence and beauty in how much we care for our parrots and what we want to do for them. You might need to turn up the volume a little bit. That's a free-flying bird. Chose to be with the soldier. Never chose to be with me, but you know. Sure, why not? So these parrot conservationists all over the world, and I know the Americas, are doing what they can to make their lives better and the parrots' lives better. So this is a project where we work in Suriname. Remember I said it's legal to export and trap them there. And so we work with a village, Kalabas and it's the very first species-specific conservation project in Suriname. And it's the first village to say no to trapping, because people come from all over Suriname and Guyana to trap on this river. So with support, we're able to train them as parrot rangers and parrot counters and scientists, and they patrol the river to discourage trapping. And so the byproducts of parrot conservation, so much transformation happens that you never are even aware of. So this is Onita. She is the field manager of the project, and you can read her quote there. She says, "I never had work before. I only went to 3 years of education, but now I'm leading my community and earning money from my family." So the potential for transformation in the communities with which we work. And she also told me this past year, when I kind of give this sort of presentation to them and talk about our sanctuaries and birds that don't have homes, and she says, "Can they fly?" I said, "Yeah, a lot of them can fly." And I didn't even prep her for this. She said, "Well, if the birds can fly, they should come back home." They want their birds back. And then moving on to Guyana, indigenous Makushi people. It's the last place where sun parakeets are in the wild. They're also on the other side of Brazil, right? It's the same ecosystem. How many sun parakeets do you think are in captivity around the world? I don't know, tens of thousands? There's a lot of them. There's only about 200 left in Guyana. Maybe 400 because they migrate, it's hard to tell. People come from all over the world to see the sun parakeets. Check it off your list, because you can't get in on the Brazil side because it's indigenous territory. They don't really want people to go there. I went there once, and they threatened to kill us and burn our car. So tourists tend to come in from the Guyana side. And so they're developing ecotourism. They want to protect the parrots, because it's legal in Guyana, again, to trap. So they want to say, not in our village. And then we want to build livelihoods off of the parakeets. But again, moments of transformation happen that you just don't expect. So these are the parakeet rangers, and they're about ready to go out counting and doing nest observations. they were the first people to document, other than poachers, wild sun parakeet nests. And now we've got this huge scientific study happening going on there. So there they are. It's hard work. And so I just asked them one going away party. I said, well, why do you guys work with sun parakeets? And Kane told me, I need the parakeets. I need freedom. So the work with parrots is a struggle for freedom. This is what they know and what they have taught me. And so one of the sayings in many of our projects are none are free until all of us are free. This is a young yellow-naped Amazon in Nicaragua that fell from a nest and had to be protected until she learned to fly on her own. Again, that's not how you want to release parrots, but it's what we had to do. And the bird was fine and is free-flying to this day. But it's the sentiment that the birds are teaching us freedom, and it's what we want for them, and it's what we want for ourselves. But the struggle for freedom and liberation is ongoing. It's not easy for any of us. You know, what are we going to do with this? There's a lot of us on this planet. How do we live that the health of one is the health of all, or none are free until all are free? How do we really do that? Well, I'm going to end with some ideas of what I've learned from these people of how we do this. But I want to tell you just a few more stories of their struggles. This is Cindy. This is a village in Honduras. And I was visiting, and the grandmother came up to me and said, come see our scarlet macaw. And I said, no, it's okay. I don't really want to see your scarlet macaw. She said, no, the bird can fly. It's not a pet bird. We rescued the bird from a wildfire, and the bird comes and goes. And she turned to Cindy, her granddaughter, and said, Cindy, go get your bird. And so I want to show you this video of the two of them playing.
Okay, otra vez vuelta.
Otra vez, recordate, pero volteando a ver, mami. Qué bonita salió. Sí. El gallo salió. Ajá. Ahí está acostada.
Ay, no me muerdas,
Allí. Volteate aquí la cara, la cabeza.
Te la di vuelta. Tiene la dieta.
They were both 4 years old, and they had grown up together. Who doesn't want that in their home for their children? Who doesn't want that connection with a wild animal? And that's the struggle for freedom that we have. And I want to continue this story with how this family dealt with that. I went back a few years later, and I went to the grandmother's home, and there was no Cindy, and there was no Parrot. And I said, what happened? And she proceeded to tell me, it was a terrible thing. The mother came to take Cindy back to the capital city, and we knew that a macaw could not live in the capital city. But here was the first lie. We told Cindy that we would send the bird later. And so Cindy's in the car driving out from the village. She's bawling, she's screaming, my macaw, my macaw. And Cindy would call every week, and then I would continue to lie and said, your bird is fine, your bird is fine. But that bird was not fine. The week after Cindy left, that bird pulled out every feather from her body. The bird didn't eat, the bird didn't move, the bird didn't fly, and I had to keep telling Cindy her bird was fine. And then one day, the birds began to let the feathers grow in, began to fly further and further away, and then a pair of wild macaws, scarlets, flew over, and Cindy's bird went to go join them, and I went running after them because I said, I cannot tell Cindy I lost her bird. And then I stopped. And I said, what would the bird want? The bird would want freedom. And she pointed to these wristbands that say Parrot Fly Free in native languages around the world. You guys are going to get some in your goodie bag on your way out. And she said, I had to let the bird go. So what does all this mean? I don't know, you're going to tell me what it means, but let me give you some ideas of what it means for me and the people I work with. And some of this comes out of the book, The Parrot in the Mirror, as well as the book, Avian Illuminations. And what Boris Sachs says in this book, says, if we lose birds, it's the end of humankind because we evolved around them. Their culture is ours. It tells us how we got to where we are and where we could still go. Parrots tell so many people of what we could do together. And because of this struggle of freedom, this saying also resonates strongly in our projects, that no cage is big enough. And I can't really speak for them, but I'm assuming this is what they feel when they talk to me, is that they don't want to be in prison. They don't want restrictions from the society. They want to be free. They're struggling. And so they want it for everybody. They want it for everybody. And I think that's maybe why this other saying that we do is unconditional solidarity. Solidaridad incondicional. So we have stickers and patches. And if you're really, buy me a beer, I'll give you some, you know. I brought some extras. And the projects just seem to really latch onto this as their logo, their patches on their phones, because it resonates really deeply. And we have a scarlet macaw, we also have a blue and yellow, and the macaw is saying, stop. The harm has got to stop. And it's also reaching out a foot in welcome and solidarity. Look how happy she looks. This is a veterinarian in our Paraguay project, a little yellow chevron parakeet that was injured and got released, enjoyed the flock. Conservationists, I think we feel free when we keep our birds free. Here we are in Paraguay. A family protects red and green macaws in their patio. They have a nest. And so the work of conservation is keeping families free and flourishing of all species. So part of the work that helps us keep on track for freedom is promising with one another to keep parrots flying free. And that's where we have these wristbands that are in the colors of the species, whatever they want to highlight, and it's in the native language, Spanish and English as well. Parrots fly free. There are about 8,000 people with these around the world. And when you put them on, it isn't just a pretty band, it's a promise. We call it being banded or being married to the promise to join this huge global team so our parrots can fly free. So I didn't go into this at all, but our conservation projects, they look like conservation projects. We're doing metrics, we're doing fundraising, we're doing monitoring, we're doing all of that, research, medicine. And these are some of the categories in conservation. And over there in the top corner is livelihoods. You know, helping the people stay well is a critical part. It's not going to work without that. But what I've learned and what my perspective is, there is so much more we can do. I can't save with those wonderful people In Honduras, they're macaws, or they're forests. We can't do it. We're trying, at risk, but we need a restructuring of economies and healthy governance. That's what's going to do it. So we don't have that demand coming in and harming lives. So just more along that line from stories of people that I work with, let's shift to Guyana. These are Cater Falls. It's the largest falls, the highest in the world. And tourists go there, and we went there one time, and oh my gosh, there were red and greens nesting on the wet cliffside. Totally protected because no one's crazy enough to climb down those wet cliffs to take those birds. So we've been working in Guyana for about 10 years, and we did a tour of many different indigenous villages, and I would sort of talk to them about sanctuaries and welfare and the international trade. And one of them told me, a Makushi indigenous person told me this: they come to take what is ours to make it theirs. And mostly talking about international buyers in the parrot trade. So much of the motivation, mine and people I work with, is reparations. It's putting the parrots back. I told you at the beginning of the talk, I've worn all those hats. I've worked for some of the largest parrot collections in the world as an aviculture veterinarian. I grew up with birds in my home. And so I have a really strong desire on what I've learned and how my life has been transformed. I never meant it to happen, it just did, is I need to give back what I took. So my work in Paraguay was largely about that because I had a beloved Nende parakeet for 25 years. And then in our family, we had a number of species that came out of the region of Paraguay. And I said, I have to give back. This bird was in a cage his whole life. I got to give it back. So my first trip to Paraguay, trying to scout out how we could do projects, I took back feathers from all those various species. The birds had long died. And I returned them to their homeland. Well, not all of us can do that. So what can we do? I can't change society, restructure healthy governance. Okay, so what can we do? Well, there are things we can do now. And one of the things we can do now is listen to birds and connect to birds and help people do that. This is a book we have coming out. Also have a presentation on it later today about how we help people connect to birds. Just listen to them. You don't have to listen to me or read the paper or anything. Just go out and listen to the birds. They'll tell you what's going on. And as you listen to birds, listen to the people. Listen to each other. Listen to the stories. And so here's an example where we combine the two. This is back in Honduras. And so we're doing a health study of young scarlet wild macaw chicks. And we had to take soldiers in with us, the kind of usual thing. And I'm sitting there going, wait a minute, I'm the gringa here. Why am I the only one who gets to touch this bird and listen to the heart? And so I looked at the bird and said, you look like you'll be okay. And so everyone took a turn with the stethoscope to listen to the heart. And here's the very first time I ever did that. And we might need volume 2 here.
Tell me if you can't hear it. I'll move it. Oh, sounds beautiful. It's like music to my ears. It is the prettiest thing. To me, it's the prettiest thing in the world. It's beautiful. It's the prettiest thing. And then when you do surgery and you actually see the heart, you just go, oh my gosh.
People were crying. Can you see them smiling? The man right there with the stethoscope said it was the most transcendent moment in his life to hear the heart rate of the national bird of Honduras. So how can you listen to birds and listen to people and catch the buzz? We call them parrot pilgrimages. They're about reflection and learning and sharing with communities and counting a lot of parrots. We do them in Nicaragua and Guatemala. They're spiritual. You know, we walk, we have little signs that say parrots fly free, and we share our experience of parrots with one another. So it's one way to get into this experience or have people you know come and be part of this. We also have various things that we've heard our partners in these countries tell us to tell everyone else. And they say, share these stories far and wide. Don't buy parrots. Don't breed parrots. Don't sell parrots. Adopt. Donate. You save a parrot, you're going to save a people and save a planet. Our partners also told us, this is in Mexico and Central America, it's a coalition called LoraKim Sin Fronteras, just tired of the trade, domestic and international, just taking our parrots. And so got together, and the whole idea of this coalition is to stop the demand. No more birds as pets. And so these are local groups that saying we want to do huge publicity campaigns to stop it. And so modeling after that, we've just started an international one called the Alliance for Protection of Parrots. And our motto is stop the trade, stop the demand, no more birds in cages. Well, except for conservation and, maybe we have to do some research and, maybe they can't be released. So really what we're saying, no more birds in cages unless it's absolutely necessary for their welfare. But that's too long of a line. So we just say, no birds in cages. So we have some conferences coming up. You can be a part of this. You can send people this way. We try to provide resources to where people are. We don't go tell them, no more birds in cages. They come and say to us, well, I live in Africa. What do you have? Can we develop materials for Africa? Okay, we'll support you. What do you need? In India? Okay, we'll support you there. And then we also have something called the Parrot Conservation Corps, where it's a year-long intensive course teaching transformative parrot conservation. It's very nuts and bolts conservation too, but it's also very strongly the human dimension. And we say, everything has to change. Therefore, we are dedicated to changing ourselves, our organizations, our communities, our families, and this takes knowledge, compassion, and courage. The call is urgent. Will you answer? And I'm asking you, will you answer? We need superheroes for transformative conservation. And so to close up this talk, you all have heard enough from me. We have a short documentary from the Honduras Project. Let's listen to some of their voices, shall we? And then after that, I guess we're not going to have time for questions and comments unless you all want to put lunch off. But let's just go ahead and see this film.
So, when I was a child, the macaws were thick here. They were flying everywhere. And then, they started to disappear.
Every day during the breeding season of the scarlet macaw, the people of Mabita prepare to patrol the thick pine forests of the Honduran Mosquitia.
In 2014, we were able to document that every nest in this core conservation area of Mabita was poached. Nothing escaped the illegal wildlife trade. It was very disheartening.
Poaching is the #1 threat to the scarlet macaw, largely driven by a domestic and international pet trade. It's estimated only 1,500 scarlet macaws are left in Central America. About 500 of them live in this one region of Honduras.
In Honduras, most of the chicks go to Bay Island. For the tourists and hotels, loves parrots, loves macaws, and they use as attraction. But I think they don't know, or they don't want to know, the damage that they are causing in the wild.
In the 1980s, Honduras exported some 12,000 birds per year, mostly parrots and macaws, to the U.S. pet trade. Honduras declared the activity illegal in 1990, but it's estimated that hundreds of scarlet macaw chicks are still taken from the Mosquitia every year through a network of poachers, middlemen, and international traffickers.
We had people for the last 2 years from China boating up and down the river between Nicaragua and Honduras asking to buy eggs and chicks. So these birds are being trafficked to Asia and probably India and Arabia as well, because you will see these species of birds in pet stores there.
The Apupani Project, which means scarlet macaw in mosquito, started with the small village of Mabita in 2010.
I was somewhat startled to hear the people here saying, we don't see our parrots anymore and we would be interested in seeing if we can protect them.
Thanks to funders like the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, it's the largest community-patrolled parrot conservation area in Latin America. The patrols have significantly reduced poaching. The patrols that began in Mabita are now taking place in 6 different communities throughout the Mosquitia.
We banned them because, one, we can tell one chick from the other, and 2, if the poachers take them, we know there are birds and where they came from. So any birds that in this area, anywhere in the world that have a band on their right side with our number, there are birds and they should come back.
I feel sad because when the chicks are taken, the parents are flying around as if they were crying. It's like if you lost your children, you would be sad. It's the same for them. And that's a reason I feel sad too. We're trying to work with other communities around Mabita to teach them how to take care of and conserve the macaw. Because if we work together, we can help the macaws to survive. We want to send a message to the world to help us conserve the macaws.
It's honorable work, but it's also dangerous. The men and women who patrol these woods must also confront poachers.
I was in the river taking a bath, and suddenly, I don't know how many of them, people behind the bushes started shooting at me. Thank God I survived. And after that, I felt that I loved the macaws more because I was fighting for them. I feel that this love is for them.
For decades, poaching scarlet macaw chicks was the primary way people here made a living.
I used to be a poacher. I would climb the trees and take out the chicks. There's no opportunity for us, and that's the reason why we used to be poachers.
Today, the Apupani Project provides a better way. Team members receive a salary of about $8 a day versus $20 to $60 for one poached bird. They can provide for their families by helping the macaws instead of selling them.
With projects like this, we can help the poachers to be conservationists.
Project members have established the Rescue and Liberation Center of Mabita for birds confiscated from poachers and traffickers. Here, they care for the macaws until they can be released back in the wild.
Before I started working with the macaws, my life was really different. I decided to work for the macaws. I've never earned any income, and so I benefit, and so do the birds.
guamo was misa, mabita vilara. Sula nani wapisa, mabita vilara.
I can really see that the future of the birds is tied into the well-being of the people here. That as the project goes forward, it will help the birds as well as the people.
Bueno, mi visión es seguir adelante.
I have a vision for the project here and the macaws here. We just have to keep going forward. We have to leave something for our children.
Thank you again for sharing the journey. I look forward to hearing your journey during the rest of the conference. Thank you.